Ladies and gentlemen, let's get one thing straight right away. Intelligence is not just about what's in your mind. It's about what comes out of your mouth. Have you ever walked into a room and felt the energy shift? Not because someone was the loudest, but because she was the most aware. What you say isn't just noise. It's a signal, a message, a declaration. The words that come out of your mouth don't just fill silence, they paint a picture of your confidence, your mindset, your boundaries, and your worth. Whether you're whispering across a table or speaking on a stage, those words are crafting a narrative, and here's the truth that too many people overlook. People don't respond to your intentions, they respond to your language. How you say something often carries more weight than what you're saying. Think about it. Have you ever heard someone say, "I'm just lucky"? After they've accomplished something huge, it might sound modest, even humble, but what it really says is, "I don't believe I earned this." And people start to believe that too. You set the tone for how the world treats you. If you speak with doubt, people will doubt you. If you speak with certainty, even when you're still learning, they'll lean in and believe. Words are powerful, not because they make noise, but because they tell people how to see you. And the scariest part, most of us do it unconsciously. We minimize, we deflect, we apologize for taking up space. Why? Because somewhere along the way, we were taught to be nice, to not sound too confident, to not make others uncomfortable. But guess what? Shrinking yourself doesn't make the world brighter, it just makes you invisible. An intelligent woman knows that every sentence is an opportunity to affirm her identity. When she speaks, she doesn't seek permission. She doesn't preface everything with "I'm not sure if this makes sense, but," or "this might be a dumb idea." No. Why tear yourself down before you've even built your thought? That's not humility. That's self-sabotage in disguise, and the world is listening, consciously or not. Let me be clear. It's not about sounding like a robot or memorizing big words. It's about owning your voice. You can be warm and kind and still speak with precision. You can be assertive without being aggressive. You can be bold without being arrogant. It's about intention. When you say, "I think we could try," instead of "here's what I recommend." What are you really doing? You're asking for permission instead of offering leadership. You're giving people a reason to second guess you, because you guessed yourself first. People won't always remember exactly what you said, but they will remember how you made them feel. And your language is the gateway to that feeling. If your words are cluttered with doubt, apology, hesitation, that's the feeling you leave behind. But if your words are clean, purposeful, and strong, they'll remember your clarity, even if they forget the specifics. This is especially true in high-stakes moments: job interviews, first impressions, conflict resolution, negotiations. When emotions run high and eyes are on you, your words aren't just sounds, they are signals. They say, "I know who I am," or "I don't." Which signal are you sending? Think about the last time you heard someone speak with total certainty. They may not have had all the answers, but didn't you believe them anyway? Didn't you trust their energy, their delivery, their presence? That's the power of words, and more specifically, the power of how you use them. So why is this especially important for women? Because society has trained women to soften their speech, to smile through discomfort, to dilute statements with "just" and "maybe," and I was wondering if intelligent women reject that, not out of rebellion, but out of self-respect. They know the cost of playing small, and they refuse to pay it. That's not to say intelligence is loud or boastful, quite the opposite. Intelligent women don't talk just to be heard. They speak when they have something to say, and when they do, their language reflects clarity, confidence, and calm authority. Not arrogance, not aggression, just presence. Your voice is your first tool of influence. Before anyone sees your resume, your skills, your work ethic, they hear you. What are you teaching them to expect? What are you letting them believe about you? Because here's the thing, when you speak with strength, people respond differently, opportunities open, respect follows, and not because you asked for it, but because your words made it clear that you deserve it. So yes, words shape perception, and that perception can change your career, your relationships, your self-image, your entire trajectory. If that doesn't make language powerful, what does? Let me know if you'd like this shaped into a video script podcast narration, or formatted for presentation slides. Emotionally rich, professional in tone, and crafted to feel real and impactful without subheadings or a conclusion. Silence is often misunderstood. To many, it feels uncomfortable, awkward, even weak. But for the intelligent woman, silence is not a void, it's a choice. It's not the absence of power, it is power, real, controlled, deliberate power. Because when you know who you are, when you trust your value, you stop needing to prove it with noise. You stop rushing to fill silence just to feel in control. Instead, you become the control. Have you ever watched someone completely own a room without saying much at all? There's a stillness to them that commands attention. They don't interrupt. They don't over-explain. They don't speak just to be heard. And somehow, in that quiet restraint, they have more presence than the loudest person in the room. That's not a coincidence, that's intention. Silence allows space for listening, for observing, for strategizing. And intelligent women know how to use that space wisely. They listen when others are trying to impress. They wait when others rush to respond. They rid the room while everyone else tries to control it. Because when you listen more than you speak, you learn what others miss. You hear what's not being said. You notice patterns, motives, energy shifts. And that gives you the edge every single time. There's strength in restraint. Anyone can talk. Anyone can react. But it takes a steady kind of self-possession to hold your tongue when you're tempted to defend, correct, or prove yourself. Silence says, I'm not here to convince you. I know who I am. That confidence speaks volumes without you saying a word. Silence is also a filter. When you stop talking, people reveal themselves. They rush to fill the space. They overshare. They expose insecurities or intentions they didn't mean to show. And all you had to do was wait. That's the hidden advantage of silence. It gives others just enough rope to show you who they really are. But make no mistake, silence doesn't mean passivity. Intelligent women are not passive. They are intentional. They speak when there's something worth saying, and they know that the most powerful voice in the room isn't always the loudest. It's the one that speaks last, with impact. They don't waste words trying to be liked or understood by everyone. They speak once with clarity, and they let the silence that follows do the work. Silence also allows you to hold your boundaries. You don't need to argue to assert your values. You don't need to yell to show strength. Sometimes, walking away without a word is louder than any comeback. Sometimes, the refusal to engage is the greatest show of control. Intelligent women don't give everyone access to their emotions. They don't perform their reactions for the comfort of others. They understand that silence can be the strongest form of communication. It can say, "This conversation is beneath me," or "You won't get a second chance," or "I see everything, and I choose not to respond." And in moments of conflict, silence is where your composure is built. It's the pause before the storm, the breath before the decision, the space where you choose not to escalate, not to react emotionally, not to match someone else's chaos. Because when you remain calm, quiet, steady, you hold the power, you own the moment. Even in leadership, silence is a weapon. Intelligent leaders don't always speak first in the room. They let others reveal their thinking. They ask sharp questions, and then they wait. The silence that follows is intentional. It invites clarity, accountability, truth. It shows that you're not afraid to let others fill the space because you already own it. In personal relationships, silence is equally powerful. You don't have to respond to every provocation. You don't have to explain your decisions to people who have already made up their minds. Intelligent women don't defend their standards, they embody them. Their silence says, "I've said enough, now watch what I do." That kind of presence doesn't need applause or permission. It's undeniable. The world will often try to make you feel small for being quiet. It will mistake your silence for weakness, for indecision, for submission. Let them think that, until your actions speak louder than anything you could have said, because those who underestimate silence always forget. It's the quiet ones who usually change everything. So next time you're tempted to fill the air with noise, ask yourself, is this necessary, or am I afraid of the space silence creates? Because sometimes in that space is where your power actually lies. Let me know if you'd like to turn this into a video monologue or paired with visuals for a keynote delivery, crafted with emotional depth and a natural, compelling rhythm without subheadings or a conclusion. Confidence isn't always what it looks like. It's not the person speaking the most, standing the tallest, or taking up the most space in the room. Confidence doesn't always announce itself with bold gestures or booming voices. Sometimes the quietest person in the room is the one who knows exactly who they are, and that's the loudest statement of all. We've been taught to associate confidence with volume, with visibility, with constant expression. But real confidence, it doesn't need an audience. It doesn't seek validation. It's calm, it's grounded, it's steady. It doesn't scream for attention. It simply commands respect. There's something magnetic about someone who isn't trying so hard to prove themselves. You can feel it, the way they walk, the way they listen, the way they answer only when there's something worth saying. That's not shyness, that's control, that's presence. You don't need to hear them brag to know they've done the work. You don't need to see them dominate a conversation to know they carry authority. Their confidence shows up in how they don't need to be seen, because they already see themselves. People often confuse arrogance for confidence. But arrogance is loud because it's insecure. It pushes itself to the front of the room, to the top of the feed, to the center of attention, because it needs the spotlight to feel whole. Confidence doesn't. A truly confident woman can walk into a room, speak once, and leave an impression that lasts far longer than someone who spent the entire meeting talking. Why? Because she knew she didn't need to perform. She didn't need to prove. She didn't need to fight for her value. It was already intact. Confidence also doesn't rush. It doesn't panic when things don't go as planned. It adapts, it pauses, it breathes. You can feel the difference between someone who needs constant reassurance and someone who trusts their own decisions. A confident woman can admit she doesn't know something without crumbling. She can say, "Let me think about that," and not feel any less capable. Because her power doesn't come from always having the answers. It comes from knowing she can find them. And here's what's often overlooked. Confidence allows space. It doesn't dominate or overshadow. It doesn't interrupt or compete. It invites. Confident people elevate others because they don't see them as a threat. They celebrate talent, encourage ideas, and make room for others to shine. That's real strength, the kind that isn't built on tearing others down, but lifting everyone together. You know confidence when you see it in someone's posture, the way they sit without fidgeting, the way they hold eye contact, not as a challenge but as a quiet connection, the way they handle criticism, not defensively but with curiosity. They don't panic when someone disagrees with them. They don't collapse under doubt. They hold steady not because they believe they're always right, but because they believe in their ability to grow, adapt, and learn. Confidence is also knowing when to say no, when to walk away, when to protect your peace instead of chasing approval. It's the strength to disappoint someone else in order to stay true to yourself. That kind of confidence doesn't need permission. It doesn't need likes, it doesn't need to be explained, it just is. We often see people online on stages in meetings, loud, expressive, dominating, and sometimes, yes, those people are confident, but sometimes they're compensating. And the woman sitting quietly in the corner, listening intently, choosing her words carefully. She might just be the strongest one there, because she knows that when she finally speaks, people will listen. Not because she's louder, but because her words carry weight. Confidence isn't loud because it doesn't come from performance. It comes from preparation, from lived experience, from resilience, from knowing you've faced the worst days and still made it through. It comes from keeping promises to yourself when no one's watching, from holding your own when everything around you feels unstable. There's nothing louder than a woman who knows her worth and doesn't feel the need to explain it. She doesn't compete, she doesn't chase, she doesn't beg to be seen. She chooses where her energy goes, and that quiet confidence, that calm, steady certainty, it's unforgettable, so don't ever mistake volume for strength. Don't confuse noise with impact. The woman who whispers truth is often more powerful than the one who shouts for attention, because confidence isn't always heard, it's felt, and when it's real, it doesn't need to be loud to be known. Let me know if you'd like a companion piece, such as a visual storyboard or podcast-style version, Rejecting Victimhood, written with emotional clarity and strength, without subheadings or conclusion. There is a quiet strength in the decision to no longer live in the role of the victim. Life will hurt, people will disappoint you, systems will fail you, and yes, there are moments, even seasons, where the pain isn't your fault, but staying in that pain, choosing to wrap yourself in it like a permanent identity. That's where power is either lost or reclaimed. An intelligent woman understands this. She knows the difference between being hurt and staying hurt, between being wronged and building her whole life around the wound. Victimhood is seductive. It whispers, "You're not responsible." It gives you someone to blame. It gives you a story, but the cost of that story is your freedom. It traps you in patterns. It makes excuses. And most dangerously, it tells you that you have no control, but you always do, even if it's just how you respond, even if it's just how you rebuild. Choosing to reject victimhood doesn't mean pretending nothing ever happened. It doesn't mean denying the pain. It means refusing to let the pain define who you are. It means standing in front of the mirror and saying, "Yes, that happened, and now I decide what happens next." That's where healing begins. That's where real identity begins, not from what broke you, but from what you chose to become despite it. There's a certain power that rises when a woman refuses to be pitied, when she says, "I don't need saving, I'll save myself." That shift changes everything. She doesn't look for someone to fix her. She doesn't stay in environments that feed her weakness. She stops asking, "Why did this happen to me?" and starts asking, "What can I do with it?" And that question, "What can I do with it?" is the turning point. Because when you reject victimhood, you begin to understand that your story, as painful as it might be, is not the end of you. It's a chapter. It's something that happened to you, not something that is you. And with that space comes possibility. With that clarity comes action. You start to take ownership of your choices, your thoughts, your outcomes, not because it's easy, but because no one else will do it for you. Victimhood makes everything external. It blames the boss, the partner, the parents, the system, and sometimes those things are real obstacles, but staying stuck in blame doesn't change them. It only distracts you from your own power. Reclaiming that power means asking hard questions. What am I allowing? What patterns am I repeating? What responsibility am I avoiding because it's easier to say, "It's not fair"? An intelligent woman doesn't live in fair. She lives in reality. She knows fairness isn't promised, but choice still is, and no matter what's happened, she always has a choice. She can choose to speak up. She can choose to walk away. She can choose to try again. She can choose to build something new. That's what rejecting victimhood looks like. It's not about denying pain. It's about rising above it. People may tell you you're strong for what you've been through, but strength isn't surviving the pain. It's what you do with the pain. It's how you rise without resentment, how you build without bitterness, how you turn heartbreak into wisdom, failure into fire, and disappointment into discipline. That's not weakness, that's power, that's transformation. And let's be honest, it's tempting to stay in victimhood. It gives you permission to stop trying, to protect yourself from further disappointment. But that protection becomes a prison. It keeps you small. It keeps you guarded. And over time, it becomes harder to tell the difference between what hurt you and what's holding you back now. You start to carry pain like proof, but what if you could carry it like fuel? Rejecting victimhood is not about pretending you're invincible. It's about saying, "I've been through it, and I still choose to rise." It's the quiet refusal to be broken again in the same place. It's the decision to own your story, not live at the mercy of it. It's power, not in perfection, but in resilience, in movement, in saying, "I get to choose what happens next." Because you do, you always do. Let me know if you'd like a visual or audio version of this for a keynote, podcast, or reel. No Room for Gossip, written with a powerful tone, emotional depth, and clarity, without subheadings or a conclusion. There's a kind of discipline that doesn't always get noticed, but it changes everything, the discipline to stay out of gossip. In a world where drama is currency and small talk often turns toxic, choosing to keep your voice clean, your name out of petty conversations, and your energy focused is one of the clearest signs of intelligence and emotional maturity. It's not just about being polite, it's about protecting your integrity, because the moment you open the door to gossip, you start renting space in your mind to things that don't feed your growth. Gossip is noise. It pretends to be connection, but it's really distraction. It disguises itself as bonding, as shared secrets, as just talking. But make no mistake, when people bond over tearing others down, there's no real strength in that relationship. It's built on weakness, and anyone who brings gossip to you will absolutely carry gossip about you. That's not just a theory, it's a pattern. An intelligent woman knows this. She doesn't entertain the habit of discussing people who aren't in the room. Why? Because she values her time. She understands that every minute spent dissecting someone else's life is a minute taken away from building her own. She has better things to do, bigger dreams to chase, more meaningful conversations to have, and more importantly, she refuses to be a container for someone else's bitterness. The urge to gossip often comes from a deeper place: jealousy, insecurity, boredom. It gives people a temporary high, a sense of superiority, a way to feel important without actually doing anything important. But confident women don't need that. They don't look for relevance by diminishing others. They don't participate in narratives that don't concern them. They know their power, and part of that power is silence. There's also a difference between being informed and being involved. You can know what's happening without inserting yourself. You can be aware of someone's behavior without broadcasting it. Gossip thrives on assumption and exaggeration. It twists facts, feeds on rumors, and turns small truths into poisonous stories. It doesn't solve problems, it multiplies them. And for what? A few minutes of feeling entertained. Some people confuse gossip with venting or processing. But venting becomes gossip the moment it stops being about understanding your own experience and starts being about attacking someone else's. Intelligent women know the difference. They choose to speak directly, not indirectly. If something needs to be addressed, they confront it. If something doesn't need their input, they let it go. That's not weakness, it's strength. It takes far more control to stay silent than to spill secrets, far more maturity to rise above than to sink in. And let's be clear, refusing to gossip doesn't mean you're blind, it means you're strategic. It means you're focused. It means you protect your mind like you protect your peace. Because every conversation you allow into your space is either building you or draining you, and gossip, it drains. It doesn't just affect the target of the conversation. It corrodes the speaker too. It reveals your character. It says more about you than about them. And the people listening, they're watching. They're learning how you move. They're deciding whether they trust you with their name when they're not around. When you decide there's no room for gossip in your life, you send a message: I operate on a different level. I don't have time for childish games. I don't invest in drama. I invest in truth, in growth, in forward motion. And yes, that decision might make some people uncomfortable. It might even cost you popularity, but it will earn you something much more valuable: respect. People remember how they feel around you. If they feel safe, if they feel inspired, if they feel challenged to be better, then you're doing something right. And nothing makes people feel safer than knowing they can trust your silence just as much as your voice. That you won't use their pain as entertainment, that you won't betray them for approval, that you don't need gossip to feel powerful. Your time is precious, your voice is powerful, your mind is capable of extraordinary things. Don't waste them on small conversations. Rise above, stay focused, keep your name clean, and when they wonder why your life is moving forward while theirs is stuck in circles, remember this: you chose peace over noise, growth over drama, power over pettiness. You made room for success by refusing to make room for gossip. Would you like this adapted into a real script, speech delivery, or interactive format for a session? Self-respect above all, written with emotional intensity, clarity, and realism, without subheadings or a conclusion. There's a moment in every woman's life when she realizes that the way she lets people treat her is a direct reflection of how she sees herself. And in that moment, something shifts. She stops chasing approval. She stops begging to be chosen. She stops trying to fit into places she's outgrown. Why? Because she's finally learned to place one thing above all else: self-respect. Self-respect isn't about ego. It's not about pride or being untouchable. It's about knowing your value and refusing to trade it for temporary comfort. It's about drawing lines, not to keep people out, but to protect the peace within. It's about saying, I matter too. In a world that constantly pushes you to prioritize everything and everyone else first, there's a certain power that comes from choosing yourself, not in a selfish way, but in a deeply necessary one. Because when you respect yourself, you start living with intention, you speak with clarity, you walk with purpose, you stop waiting for someone else to recognize your worth. You look in the mirror and you recognize it yourself. And that's when everything changes. You no longer entertain half effort. You don't explain your boundaries 1,000 times to people who never respected them in the first place. You don't make excuses for bad behavior just to keep the peace. You become the peace. You stop negotiating with what you know in your gut is wrong for you. You stop shrinking to make others comfortable. You stop apologizing for having standards, because self-respect isn't just about how you treat yourself, it's about what you refuse to tolerate. It's easy to preach self-love, but self-respect, that's tested in the moments when it's hard, when someone's giving you attention but not consistency, when someone says they care but shows you otherwise. When an opportunity looks shiny but costs you your soul, that's when the real question hits. Are you willing to walk away? Are you willing to be alone for a while rather than stay where you're not valued? Are you willing to choose discomfort over disrespect? Because here's the truth, every time you accept less than you deserve, you teach yourself to settle. You teach yourself that your needs are negotiable, that your feelings don't matter, that your voice can wait, and over time you start forgetting who you are. You start believing the story that you're too much, too difficult, too sensitive, too demanding. But that story, it's not yours. It was written by people who benefited from you doubting your worth. An intelligent woman rewrites the story. She gets tired, but not bitter. She gets disappointed, but not broken. She learns, she grows, she adjusts her crown and keeps walking, because her self-respect isn't just a quiet whisper. It's a loud, unwavering truth. It tells her, you don't have to prove anything, you just have to be. And in a world full of noise, that grounded confidence is rare. Self-respect is knowing when to stay silent and when to speak up. It's knowing when to compromise and when to stand firm. It's knowing when to forgive and when to let go for good. It's trusting yourself enough to make hard choices even when no one claps for you. Even when it hurts, even when the old version of you would have stayed, because you're no longer living for comfort, you're living for alignment. You start asking different questions. Not do they like me, but do I feel respected here? Not how do I keep them, but is this good for my soul? Not will they be upset, but am I betraying myself to keep this peace? And that shift, that's where the strength is. That's when the woman you were always meant to be starts to rise. People may call you cold, too firm, too distant. Let them talk, because the ones who are threatened by your self-respect are the same ones who are hoping you'd keep dimming your light. Don't stand tall, speak clearly, walk away without guilt, and love yourself so deeply that being disrespected feels foreign, unbearable even for a second. You only get one life, one voice, one soul. Protect it, honor it, choose people, places, and paths that choose you back. And if they don't, have the courage to choose yourself every single time, because at the end of the day, before love, before success, before anything else, you have to be able to look in the mirror and say, I didn't abandon me. That's self-respect. And it always comes first.